and going to a third party.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Actual Dietetics and live chat. And today we are going to explore dietetic apprenticeship. The reason we are doing this is because it's National Apprentice Week this week, where we celebrate businesses and apprentices across the country to shine a light on the positive impact that apprenticeships make to individuals, businesses, and the wider economy. And I must say, apprenticeship on its own, the concept is not really new. And in fact, Sheffield Hallam University is one of the UK's leading providers of apprenticeship. And currently, we're actually supporting nearly 3,000 students. And before I go further, I just want to do a quick introduction of myself. So my name is Long Lee, and I am a lecturer in dietetics and a registered dietitian and tonight host. And on top of that, I am the course leader for the MSc Dietetics pre-reg at Sheffield Hallam University. And if I just go by one on how my screen, my right-hand side is Katie Peck. If I just do a quick introduction, Katie.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Peck. I'm a subject group lead in occupational therapy and dietetics and art therapy, and a principal lecturer in dietetics here at Sheffield Hallam. And I've been very involved in the development of the new degree apprenticeship programme in dietetics.
And Kate obviously is very experienced in developing different courses. And in fact, she has been in higher education for many years and is very experienced. And really, she actually inspired me to become a dietetic lecturer. But I will tell you this story in the future in another live chat. And if I go down my screen to Helen and
Hello, I'm Helen McNair. I'm lecturer in dietetics here at Sheffield Hallam, and I teach on the MSc Dietetics and the Dietetic Degree Apprenticeship.
Excellent. And Helen just moved to the higher education and just last year, and before you were working in the community, and didn't you, as a team lead for the older people's team?
Yep, I worked with older adults in the community for about 12 years and was a student training lead in that team as well, which is what led me down this path to become a lecturer.
Yeah, it seems like, when we all moved to higher education before we do that, we were the student training leads. That's sort of my path as well. And now moving down is Sean Coleman. Sean.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sean Coleman. I am a senior lecturer here at Sheffield Hallam University and the new course leader for the degree apprenticeship program, which is running into its second year this year. And previously, I worked in the NHS for about 8 years, primarily in gastroenterology and surgery.
And in fact, Sean, you're doing 1 day a week and working with IBD patients. Yes.
Yeah, doing
And
a weekly inflammatory bowel disease clinic. Yeah.
a combination of clinical practice and educational practices. Okay, now this is a panel from the Sheffield Hallam University team, but we also have two panel members from the employer and as well as the student apprentice. So if we come to you, Luke, if you can do a quick introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Long. Hi, everyone. My name is Luke Cunningham. I am one of the joint professional leads for dietetics down in Cornwall. And I also work at the Royal Cornwall Hospital on the critical care unit as the dietetic team lead there. Hello.
Excellent. And obviously, Luke has done a live chat with me before. And everybody, if you're interested, it's on what is it on? It's on applying for Band 5 and dietetic jobs, and we had a good chat. And so you can find this on YouTube actually. And last but not least is our student and our dietetic student apprentice, Vicky.
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Vicky Craig, and I'm a dietetic support worker and dietetic apprentice, one of two apprentices that are at the Royal Cornwall Hospital Trust.
Excellent. So welcome, and I'm really thrilled to have this panel really to explore this topic. And I must say, um, even this topic to me is fairly new. When I was working in the NHS, I left the NHS in 2021 to join higher education. And one of my colleagues, and at that time, she just started her dietetic apprenticeship course, and she was the first cohort in the UK. So, although apprenticeship, I think, is not a new concept, but dietetic apprenticeship is still fairly new, I would say. And our course started, I think, last year, and our first cohort just finished their first year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Katie and Sean. And and obviously, recently, when I say recently, a few months ago, the NHS published the NHS long-term workforce long-term plan. And in that document, it says in the future, 25 to 50% of the dietetic workforce should come from the dietetic apprenticeship route. And I think that's really, I was quite surprised to see that. And I think obviously then the NHS put quite emphasis on dietetic apprentice based on that document. So I think my first question really for Katie and for Sean is, what is actually dietetic apprenticeship?
Well, I suppose I can start us off. So, in simple terms, a apprenticeship is a way to obtain a degree whilst in employment simultaneously. And so there's a huge amount of advantages. So you don't pay fees. This is kind of governed by government funding, and employers draw down on an apprenticeship levy. And so you're working, so you are getting a salary during your studies, and there is no fees for the students incurred. But you are essentially then working and learning at the same time. And so you're released into kind of the academic environment for teaching, for placements, and for other learning kind of methods. And you can hopefully consolidate what you're learning in university out in your workplace at regular intervals as well. So there's a huge amount of benefits to this way of learning.
I just come in there a bit too long. I was just going to add in that I think one of the real significant developments around apprenticeships is the fact that it really sort of suits that widening participation agenda, which is a really key sort of agenda in higher education, and recognises that lots of people, often leave, sort of formal education without, relevant qualifications, but go on to sort of work and study. Perhaps it's because they didn't have those opportunities at the time, or they had to go and seek other employment and get some work. And so, therefore, what apprenticeships do is they offer people who perhaps have gone on and done other things and had other careers to actually have a route back into NHS careers. So it's really setting up a sort of new second pathway into dietetics, really. I think we're familiar with the traditional route, is going to university and sort of studying formally full time. But actually, this is a very different opportunity that enables people then to work and study, which really starts to enable us to have a much more diverse body of students and apprentices coming into the NHS, which is really kind of what we're aiming for.
That's really good because obviously, like, especially those underrepresented groups, we want to reach them, and we know that dietitians is on the government short occupancy list, and I think the wider we reach, the better or the more people we can attract to this profession, and especially for areas that's really they found really difficult to recruit. I think this is a really good way to have more dietitians. And so why do you think someone might choose to study in this pathway then? Either Sean or Katie, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the reasons that Kate touched on, so, in terms of reaching people that wouldn't necessarily be
Mm,
able to go down the traditional university routes.
mm,
So for things like financial, geographical reasons, this program offers a huge amount of flexibility, different ways of working, different ways of learning, and also supporting people who also have existing experience and skills and expertise. So I think one of the biggest differences I've found in engaging with the apprenticeship cohort is that they're coming with a huge amount of life experience, previous experiences in wide different fields, and it's a lot of transferable skills that they can use while they're developing as a student dietitian. And I think they bring a really fresh and a real value to the student dietitian kind of pathway.
And what do you think? Yeah, Katie.
I think it really suits some people too in terms of the way in which they like to learn. I think sometimes, learning on the job and actually sort of, being engaged in dietetic practice while you're learning, really suits some people. I think it helps people to sort of make sense of their learning and be able to study in a way that really works effectively and sort of quite well for them. I think that's sort of, quite a big plus, I think, in terms of why people do that. And some people too, might already have degrees in other subjects, science-related subjects, but actually they want to go on and study dietetics, and perhaps they've sort of been through that traditional route already, but actually what they're wanting to do now is sort of develop their opportunity to study for a dietetics career and do it in a much more practical way and do it through learning on the job. So I think it also suits people who are coming in perhaps, from a postgraduate route, but they can perhaps then come on to the second year of our programme and have some accelerated progression through the course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that nicely just moved to you, Vicky, then. And obviously we just offered our views from the educator's point of view, but I'm really keen to find out from, an apprentice point of view of why you chose this one over the traditional route, really.
So I guess the traditional route wasn't ever really an option for me. I left school at 16 with some okay GCSEs. And then I went through sort of my working life then, gathering MVQs in like health and social care, advice and guidance, and just not the traditional route really for university. So when I came into dietetics when I was 33, I think, in a band 3 dietetic assistant role. And what grabbed my attention was up in Calderdale and Huddersfield NHS Trust, they were offering a higher education certificate alongside the job role. And that kind of gave me that confidence to think, well, I can sort of retrain into something else, and I will get the balance of learning alongside working as well. When I achieved my HE certificate in nutritional health, that then gave me an opening to go to be an assistant practitioner in dietetics, which was a really, really nice job. And I was able to sort of help in, with service behind the scenes in service development as well in the hospital, which was really, really interesting. But that's kind of where it stopped. I couldn't move any further than that, really. I came down to Cornwall 2.5 years ago and sidestepped into a joint role with dietetics and speech and language therapy. And everybody was talking about the apprenticeships. They finally come in. I'd heard them being talked about for a few years. So we had a discussion with my team, and we decided that we'd sort of like to give the apprenticeship a go and see where it took us, really. So myself and another apprentice down here, Stacey, who's also got 10 years experience in dietetics, as an assistant practitioner in paediatrics, we both decided we'd like to go for it and see what happened.
Yeah, that's really actually quite inspiring, I would say. And I think for many people who are working at the moment and thinking if you think traditional route is not for you, then obviously I think you can definitely reach out and listen to Vicky, and then her journey is really. And I wonder, you mentioned you are a dietetic support worker, and do people have to be a dietetic support worker or a dietetic assistant to
So you've got to be
study?
employed. You've got to be employed in a dietetics role to be able to come onto the apprenticeship for a minimum of 30 hours a week. And that's split with 20% off the job learning time as well. So you're in work, you're doing the job, you're learning the skills, you're applying what you're learning in university to work, and you're also applying what you've learned in work to university as well. And then you get sort of 20% of that protected learning time where you're able to shadow other teams, do some reflection on your practice, complete assignments, revise for exams, all of those other things that you need to do to sort of keep up with the degree level of education.
Yeah, sounds actually quite busy.
Yes.
This course it's not just like a part-time, it's actually full-time,
No.
isn't it? And combining both.
Yeah.
Now,
And like I said before, you know, people's lives take them in many different directions. And when the bursaries for healthcare were removed, I think that put a lot of barriers up for people who might have pursued like a career in health, in AHP or nursing.
yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why I wasn't ever able to go to university, really, because I couldn't financially afford it. Whereas now, you know, like you said before, Sean, you know, you're in an employed role, you've got a salary coming in every month, and it just takes that additional stress away from what would have been there before on the traditional route.
And I quite like the university usually say is learn while you earn. So I quite like it, and or the other way around. I think both work. And so thank you so much, Vicky. So now we've heard from the educators, we've heard from students. Let's go to you, the employer, Luke. And what is your perspective on dietetic apprenticeship?
I think I'm coming at it from, because of my like dual roles. I've got, you know, I see like Vicky's impact in our critical care team, the things that she kind of like does for us, and her kind of proactive nature on the unit, and also with our outlier service that we have. But then also with my professional lead hat on, there's a kind of like wider workforce kind of initiative. And it's interesting you brought in like the long-term workforce plan, you know, right at the top long in your introduction, because obviously myself and Vicky are down here in Cornwall. Traditionally, with our traditional learners, that they tend to be a little earlier on in life and want slightly different things from it. You know, they want often, you know, this is like a huge stereotype, but often do want the hustle and bustle of a big city. You know, they want that kind of like metropolitan, cosmopolitan lifestyle, which, you know, Cornwall has many things, but isn't necessarily strong in those particular areas. And it's well, you know, it's well recognized up and down. Rural coastal areas really struggle. There's a really like uneven distribution of staff away from those areas. They do struggle to recruit. And so if you're struggling to kind of import from outside, then why not grow your own? And I think there's also a sort of like personal kind of angle to this where, you know, I sort of fell into dietetics because at the time there was a bursary offered. You know, I didn't know about it when I did my undergraduate degree. I did the postgraduate diploma, and again, kind of because I was looking to get into healthcare, and dietetics was kind of one of the only paid for things, and I had like a natural interest in it. But I would have much preferred to kind of been a salaried person, to, you know, to kind of do that earning while you learn. While I was going through my studies, I found my placements absolutely invaluable. That practical kind of craft of the job, to kind of really put into place. I think it was Katie who said like it suits like learning style, so I can really see like the benefits of it. So personally, for, you know, for the Royal Cornwall and Cornwall as a county, it's like a really great tool. You know, the job adverts that we've had we've sort of been overwhelmed with applications of people, and I think also as an employer point of view, if you're looking for someone to kind of come and join your team, you know, it's nice to know that they kind of know what they're getting themselves into with regards to the NHS. I know a career in dietetics can take you down very many different avenues. You don't necessarily have to stay within the world of, you know, the health and social care system. But if someone kind of knows kind of going into that role eyes open, you know, it does have its challenges. I think it's fair to say, you know, it's not sunshines and rainbows all of the time. And if you know that kind of warts and all, then you potentially get a more secure candidate, if you like, at the end of the day for your workforce. So, you know, you're not just chasing vacancies around, you know, all day, every day.
There's also the beauty as well, isn't there, Luke, of it being in virtual from Sheffield. You know, that makes my life far easier than you know, than if I was having to come up to Sheffield sort of once a month for the block learning. And that means that along with all the rest of the cohort, we've got apprentices, haven't we, all over the country.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think, again, from an employer point of view, you know, there is you do kind of lose them, you know, kind of in quotes, out of the workforce for a period of time, although you kind of know that that short-term loss from that day is then investing in themselves and their learning. You know, kind of think Sean made this point, like right at the top, you know, when you came to him first, and the fact that it is digital and Sheffield offers that kind of pure remotely as an employer means that the candidates that we have, the apprentices that we have, aren't fetching themselves all over the county. Obviously, if anyone has a quick look at the map, Cornwall is pretty much tucked right out the way from everywhere else, other than Devon. So, you know, like to go from Cornwall to Sheffield, that's a hell of a journey. So, you know, the fact that you can get that learning virtually, but then turn into work the very next day and kind of start to put into practice, start to talk to your mentors or some of your colleagues that you've got relationships with, quiz them on their learning. It keeps everyone kind of like fresh. If you know that like someone like Vicky's coming in and asking you some questions, you know, you kind of need to know your stuff to make sure you're telling her right. So it's really great. You know, it's really like, it's a really valuable addition to kind of like the workforce supply, I think.
Yeah, that's great because it almost feel like a user's review from you guys, and we're just putting on Google review 5 stars for the Sheffield Hallam course. So thank you very much there, and thank you for the answer. And I think one of the things you mentioned really interesting is you said, you know, it's quite useful for employers who have been struggling to find candidates or to fill vacancy to go through this route and sort of secure the future workforce. And I think I particularly like you mentioned about the investment, and not as in lose them for 2 days, but actually an investment which will have a big return when they finish the course. And the reason I mention that is obviously I also chatted with employers who have absolutely no issues recruiting. And I think for them, they probably see less value in dietetic apprenticeship, which I think is actually a shame in my opinion. Again, it's investment in people, isn't it? And if you would like your team member, especially your support workers, to actually work for you long term, you do need to invest in them rather than say bring external people. I don't know if any of you have anything, Katie.
Just to jump in straight away on that one. Sorry, I think in the same way that you know, if anyone's looked at like the BDA post registration kind of like guide in terms of like the journey that you can go on once qualified, any one of those levels, you know, enhanced practice, foundation practice, you can get off the train at any time. You know, if you reach enhanced practice and that's it for you, you're really happy being a sort of specialist, you know, doing your patient caseloads and really comfortable in that, then that's great for you. Well, you know, you found something that you really enjoy, you can step off. We need all sorts in the workforce, and I think it does 2 things. One is existing staff who are in some of these like assistant practitioner roles or support practitioner roles who want to challenge themselves and want to take on that. You know, admittedly, I think Vicky would kind of be the first to say it's not easy to do. Like, you can dress it up as, oh, you earn while you learn and it's great and all these sorts of things, but you're also earning while you learn. Like,
you're on the very edge of your comfort zone.
We're paying to go to university to listen to sort of Helen, Katie, and Sean, you know, for 1 day a week. There's responsibilities off the back of that: assignments, learning, lecture notes. You are, you know, becoming a qualified member of the workforce. So that, you know, with all of that entails, it's not a shortcut into the profession. It's still hard work. It's just that you now have an access, or the ceiling and the rules of the game have shifted for those support staff who want that challenge, which I think is completely individualistic. And the other way is, if you have people who perhaps would have that kind of like first degree, like Katie mentioned, you know, they do a nutrition focused degree and it doesn't have those clinical elements to it. Now is a way for someone who doesn't have to just start push pause on earning, you know, can live wherever they choose to live in the country and kind of earn a, you know, a reasonable wage, whilst they then kind of potentially earn a qualification that will give them a really hopefully fruitful career like long term. So yeah, it's a really exciting addition, I think.
And Katie, did you want to?
Yeah, I think Luke sort of more eloquently made the point that I was going to say, actually, Luke, so well done. But I guess I was just going to say, although we're sort of joking a bit, saying, this earn while you learn, or learn while you earn, but actually there is some real payback, isn't there, Luke, for the employer? Because actually 1 year in now to the course, Vicky's obviously in a position where she can actually do more and contribute more than she could probably a year ago. So you do get, I think, as an employer, that sort of added benefit of actually having that person who's growing into that role, and able to do, a bit more. Obviously, is the merit, particularly under supervision, but you're having the benefit of that, while they're, on the apprenticeship program.
Yeah, I completely agree, Katie, and I think is it really any different from a newly qualified Band 5 starting in your department? And again, I think Sean made this point earlier about the apprentices that we have at the moment tend to be those that have been in and around the profession for a little bit longer. So, Vicky's a great example. She's sort of 10 to 13 years in and around nutrition and dietetics. So, the support that Vicky needs is very different from a newly qualified Band 5 who perhaps went straight from A levels, straight into undergrad, 3-4 year course, has had, brushes with the practical world of dietetics through placements, but no more than that. They need a lot of different types of support. So we're well used to doing this. It's just translating that support into a slightly different way. So, Vicky is much more around like the learning in terms of engaging with patients, building that rapport. She's got those strengths in spades, so we don't need to worry too much about that. It's more brushing up on those clinical skills and that theory and that academia.
That's it. It's like, I've been working within my scope of practice for a number of years now as an experienced assistant practitioner. And now it just gives me that sort of push to further support the patients with the additional skills and knowledge. And like you've just said, Luke, I think there's, with an experienced AP and a newly qualified Band 5, there's quite a lot of crossover there. But this course will just give me that sort of final say so that I am able to do that work, and keep developing those skills.
Yeah. And I think Luke and Vicky mentioned about the difference or potential difference between the dietetic apprentice and newly qualified Band 5, for example. And then I think my question for Katie, for Helen, for Sean is obviously you guys teach on the MSc Dietetics as well as the BSc Dietetics degree apprenticeship. And what difference do you think between these two cohorts?
For me, it is the experience. I know we're talking about that a lot, but I think what I've certainly had to learn as a teacher is to allow space in those teaching sessions for the apprentices to share their experiences and to rely on them as being a resource for our teaching as well. So we facilitate the theory and what underpins what they're seeing in practice. So we're helping them to navigate and get those academic qualifications so they haven't got the academic qualification to support that, but also hearing what they are doing and seeing in practice. So an example of that would be in a recent module, we did a session about food services management. So we were able to talk about the BDA digest, food and drink strategies, policies that trusts would have in place. But what we then had in addition to all that theory was that because the apprentices are all across the country, everyone was able to share how that looked in their trust. What are the challenges to catering provision? Is it actually practical to put all these standards, etc., into practice? What's it really like for the patients? There are some apprentices who don't have catering provision in their trust, so they were able to hear from others who do. So it's really interesting as a lecturer to incorporate that into your teaching, and that we do have a real push here at Hallam about active learning and a flipped learning approach where our learners can cover some theory and then bring that into the classroom so that we can do the application. So it's very a partnership approach, I think. And our MSc students come with very different experience because they've come with a prior degree. Some of them have been support workers in practice and have chosen that traditional route. Some have very different experiences in very different professions, and for maybe them, this is maybe a second, potentially even third career. So it's just a different way of doing it. But I think with the apprentices, their experience and application in the workplace is just so visible, and that's really interesting in the classroom to then use that alongside the theory that we need to teach for the course.
Excellent answer. Anything from you, Katie or Sean?
I think Helen's articulated that really, actually. But all I would add really is that I think the degree apprentices are an absolute pleasure to teach, because it's a little bit more like having a professional discussion with a colleague, as Helen was saying, because they bring so much learning and experience with them. And it's very much, if you said, Helen, there, it's around, supporting them really with a little bit more around how to make sense of some of that and how to sort of draw on some of that underpinning evidence base to help them apply and sort of justify their practice in the way in which they're working. But in comparison to our MSc students, they're probably initially at the beginning of the course quite a long way ahead of them, simply because they bring all this very relevant practice experience. And lots of the things that we're talking about, they already get and understand because that's part of their everyday reality, within the workplaces where they're based.
Yeah, and I really look forward to teaching on the apprenticeship course, and I haven't had a chance to meet you guys yet, but I'm sure I will in the next year or your final year. And I think everyone is very curious, and I think Vicky, you have covered a little bit. What is one of a typical day like, not from a diet point of view and from an apprenticeship point of view of if you can, or is there a typical day, and what is the schedule like? And you also mentioned about some of the challenges, and I wonder if you would like to mention a bit more and how you overcome them.
So the way that it's set out is that we have blocks of learning for the degree apprenticeship. And they're roughly about every 6 weeks. So we do a full week, Monday to Friday, virtual learning. We get background information, some reading to look at, have the professional discussions, and then talk about how we're going to be assessed on those weeks. Then we go back into the workplace for a few weeks with a list of work-based tasks. Which could be anything from sort of collecting food diaries and practicing sort of calculating nutritional requirements or calculating dietary intake, practicing anthropometry. So, and then once through the week as well, you get your 20% of your hours, which is protected learning time. So what a week tends to look like for me is I will be thinking about what I've been doing at uni. I'll be looking for opportunities to apply that in the workplace. And then I will try and plan my learning day around what we've been looking at. I tend to sort of alternate between a week where I'm actually writing assessments or revising versus a week where I'm shadowing some of the day or doing some reading about the subject that we've been looking at. So, for example, when we did the biosciences module, which was interesting considering I've not studied science since 1996, I made sure that I spent a lot of time with some of our dietitians at work who use a lot of the biochemistry in their work. So the renal dietitians were really important. I sought help from colleagues who gave me sort of tutorials that I could use. And I asked for sort of real life examples whilst I was in work, if for blood results and any sort of investigations that had taken place with any, CTs, X-rays and that kind of thing. So you've got the access all the time to resources as an apprentice. It's just kind of planning out how you need that to fit in your work. I am a mom as well. My husband works shifts. There's an awful lot going. We've got a crazy dog. There's a lot going on in our lives. So I have to be very organised and really use my protected learning time well. And the rest of it, whilst I'm at work as a support worker, it's looking for those opportunities.
And would you say like organizational skills is definitely one of the key
Absolutely.
skills people need to
Absolutely.
have to study this course?
And
Yeah.
do you know what? Sometimes it looks really big. Sometimes it looks, you know, it just feels really big. And that's when you kind of need your colleagues around you. I'm so lucky in Cornwall. I've got such a supportive team, and I am able to go to them and go, this feels really big at the moment, and can you just help me break it down a little bit? And that's what we do. And so again, that's another benefit of being on an apprenticeship, because if I was on a full-time course, I wouldn't have those links with people in the workplace who can help me break things down and make it just look that little bit more manageable.
Yeah, and you mentioned some very key words, and it's supportive basically, and in a supportive team, and so everybody, Royal Cornwall supportive team. So just do some plug for you there, Luke. And the next question really is for anyone here. When I say anyone, really, is our educators, and obviously Vicky and Luke, you mentioned about fully online this course, and so you can access from Cornwall, and you don't have to travel to Sheffield. And what other unique selling points do you think our course has?
I was
Are you
just
asking us?
sorry, go on, Luke.
You asking us, or is Sean going to do a bit of a plug?
We'll go to our educators first, and I'll come to you first, Luke.
Okay.
I'll do the boring bit first, and then I was just going to mention when Vicky was mentioning the challenges and things like that. One thing that struck me when I started was the different forms of support that are involved in delivering the apprenticeship program. So they've got their work-based mentors, which are on site or in the trust that they're working in, as a kind of a someone that's in close proximity. And then they've also got a work-based coach, which is someone employed by the university, which kind of monitors progress, touches base, and making sure that they're on track. And then obviously from our side, they've got the academic advisors and the teaching staff, as well as the support from the university generally. So from Hallam Help and student support services. So that's just kind of one thing that did strike me in terms of the apprenticeship program specifically, is that there's a lot of support, and it's coming in a lot of different forms for them.
Yeah,
I was just going to add, I think we've mentioned a few times already really that it's an online course. I think that's really exciting. You know, it's a real new development in dietetics. And when you think about dietetics being a very practical subject, you sort of wonder, well, how can you teach that online? But actually, there are lots of ways in which you can. And because we have apprentices who are in a work-based setting, it enables a lot of that practical application to happen, either in the workplace or sort of independently. And then sort of the learners come together, sort of in online sessions to be able to share and talk and disseminate their learning. So, it's quite interesting, that we're able to deliver the course in that way. And just sort of picking up from some of the comments that Luke made earlier around, sort of how challenging it can be from a workforce point of view to recruit in quite a lot of rural areas around the country. And although we have lots of employers who are sending us apprentices from some of the big urban areas, we do have, a lot of apprentices who sit in those peripheral areas or in the sort of coastal and more rural areas, where it can be really challenging, for people to access, dietetic training, but also, in a sense, because it's an online program and they're accessing their sort of learning and education via Sheffield Hallam, it then means that they're still in their local area and they're far more likely to be retained and stay in that local area once they qualify, because they haven't actually sort of moved away to go to university. So I think there's a lot of wins from the point of view of, sort of developing your local workforce and then actually retaining your local workforce, in the area where you want them.
that's great. And Luke, did you want to add anything?
I think for us as people trying to, to build a team, to build a workforce, to deliver care, we just kind of want as many options as we can get hold of, really. And as I said, it's not, we've done okay with the traditional learning model up until now, and this is not, it's not better or worse. It's just going to suit more people. So now more people, when they look at wanting a career in health and wanting a career in nutrition and dietetics, have all of a sudden got this additional option. It's not that it needs to suit every single person that's out there. It's just that, you know, if you are looking to get into it, you don't necessarily want to push pause on earning, or you can't because you've got other financial responsibilities, or whatever it might be. All of a sudden, here's a really great way to kind of do both, really, sort of have your cake and eat it, if you're kind of willing to juggle all the challenges that Vicky mentioned. So, you know, again, for people who want to invest in their staff, want to kind of show that they are really valued, and kind of work on that kind of retention agenda, which is really, really hot at the moment, you know, more so than it ever has been. This is a great way to kind of say to Vicky and, you know, her apprentice colleague Stacey, you know, we really value the work that you put in. You know, like, here's an opportunity if you want it, and both of them did, to kind of, you know, to step forward and see where their careers can go. So it's a really fantastic addition, I think.
Yeah, and I think back to what we mentioned earlier, it's widening participation, isn't it? And it's just to offer really extra option for people who prefer different learning, or have different learning style. Is the course open for all people in the UK, or just England, if I may ask?
As far as I know, isn't it, Katie? It's not available in Scotland or Northern Ireland or Wales, I don't believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it links into the funding stream, doesn't it, in terms of who can draw down on the apprenticeship levy. Yeah.
But everybody from Cornwall to Newcastle, you can apply to study this apprenticeship course at Sheffield Hallam University. It's fully online. And I'm just wondering, another one is for all of you guys, really, is what future development do you foresee in the field of dietetic apprenticeship within the NHS, or what is the long-term benefits for the NHS as well?
Well, I think for kind of like, just to like redo that point, I suppose that it just gives, you know, providers or departments just more options when they're trying to recruit. You know, they can be a little bit more creative. You know, if a vacancy has gone out time and time again, you're really struggling to recruit a band 5, it's a potential opportunity to, you know, change that into apprentice role, knowing that potentially the candidate you're going to get into that is someone that really wants to stay to the area, to commit to the department. They might already work within the department, as in the case of Vicky and Stacey. And I also think that, you know, there's a lot of talk around dietetics and about, you know, the kind of protected characteristics that you might find within dietetics, and how that's quite homogenous. And we're looking to broaden out, you know, when it comes to equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I think if you train people all in the same way, all working to basically the same kind of rule book, then you start to get quite a homogenized kind of like workforce. Well, here's an opportunity to have people who perhaps didn't have the finances, you know, to attend a traditional learning site, perhaps didn't have the finances to support that travel or that stay away from home, can now access a course through Sheffield, you know, without any of those barriers potentially. You know what I mean? It's kind of like levels the playing field a little bit. So it really does take a meaningful step towards that kind of EDI agenda, I think.
It's also a great opportunity for people to take that next step in terms of career progression whenever they've reached, you know, they've reached the top of band 3, they've reached the top of band 4. Whenever they get to that point, there isn't a next step. So it's another opportunity again to keep people in the workforce and feed those skills development forward through a different route.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other from you, Katie or Sean?
I think, I mean, obviously we're doing a level 6 degree apprenticeship, and there are there's one other university also does that, and there's also another provider who offers a level 7 route into degree apprenticeships. But I'm sure as we move forward, it will become more popular, because we will need to expand in order to meet those predicted all those workforce requirements going forward, and growing the apprenticeship route as we do so. But I guess also what we may see is apprenticeships developing in other areas. You know, if we're thinking about things to do with advancing and extending practice. That we might start to see, sort of in dietetics, other opportunities for apprenticeships coming forward. And I think sometimes when you don't necessarily have a critical mass all in one geographical area to make a course viable and effective, but actually if you can do things, in different delivery modes, and you can recruit across quite a wide geography and different areas, then actually there's lots more opportunity to sort of think a little bit about how we can really use apprenticeships to our advantage, I think, and create more opportunities, perhaps in that sort of post-registration field as well.
Definitely. So opportunities for the NHS, for the employers, and for the apprentices, but also for higher education. So opportunities for all, really. So what advice would you give to someone considering a career in dietetics through the apprenticeship route? And Vicky mentioned being highly organized. Is there any other advice you would offer?
I think touching on sort of what Luke said earlier, you need to get some work experience in this area to truly see what it's all about. The NHS isn't for everybody. We are going through some challenging times at the moment. Hopefully, we'll be coming out of that again soon. But I think, speak to your local hospital, the work experience team, try and get some work shadowing, or any sort of health and social care experience. It'd be really relevant because nutrition comes across in whichever areas you're working in, health and social care. But yeah, definitely talk to as many people as you can and get out there and sort of try and see what it's all about. You're committing to 3 years.
I think just to jump on the back of that point as well, Long, I think it's also important to explore a number of different like dietetic specialisms. I think purely because sometimes the way that the apprenticeship roles are having to be created by provider trusts at the moment, and hopefully that might change to follow a bit more of a nursing model with some central funding. But often where the apprentice kind of day job sits might not be where the clinical interest of the individual will ultimately lie. And I think it's, if you have aspirations to work on, critical care or Sean mentioned gastroenterology, IBD, surgery, that's a world apart from, and has very different challenges to kind of like lone working in the community, perhaps in home enteral nutrition, or perhaps, doing, kind of referencing Helen's specialism in frailty and older people services. So
there's a good point there, Luke, actually. We've not spoken about the placement opportunities that you get to complete. Yeah. So I've just finished placement with the Learning Disabilities Community team, which has given me some really useful experience from working in an acute team for 10 years. It's given me that sidestep, and have a look and see what else is going on. So on the apprenticeship course, you do get to do how many weeks in total? Is it
28
weeks of placement in different areas. So that is another benefit to doing it this way. Sorry, Luke.
There's so much out there. It's hard to imagine that something won't kind of like tick the box. Do you know what I mean? Like some people thought of preventive nutrition and feeding regimes and the ICU and surgery and bowels hanging out everywhere. Absolutely, they run a mile. Others, it's like catnip. So it's kind of like it's horses for courses, really. And again, like by doing that work-based learning, the contacts that you have and the network that you have, it would be very difficult for traditional learners to set up a placement like that for the intensity of that amount of time. But because these colleagues, you've got a working relationship with them, shadowing opportunities are vast, especially if you've got a lot of different specialisms around your area. So you can go and sort of, try before you buy. So I think the reason for bringing that up is it might just be that the day job is something that you do and you commit to for those 3 years, but you kind of know that your heart would be in one of the other kind of myriad specialisms that dietetics has got to offer. So it doesn't have to be, this is where I always work now forever in a day, in the broad dietetic workforce and specifically.
That's something else that, my team, I'm very lucky that they're invested in me and they're valuing me to ensure that when I do finish this course, I will be able to work wherever I want to work. I'm like Luke said, you grow in your own, and I'm not like leaving Cornwall, Luke, don't worry. But they're investing in those skills in me. So if I do choose to go and work in the community team, in the paediatrics team, in the learning disabilities team, I will have that well-rounded knowledge and experience to be able to do that.
I was just going to come in there because one of the sort of requirements of the course was that we obviously very much work to follow the BDA's pre-registration education curriculum. And as part of that, we are required to integrate 1,050 practice hours we have altogether on our course through placement. So in addition to all of that work-based learning and sort of blocks that are released at university, students undertake 3 placements throughout the programme. So we have one very early on in the first year, which is very much task orientated and sort of observational type of placement. In the second year, there's sort of quite a steep learning curve with really developing sort of clinical competencies in a different range of area and sort of expertise. And also we have linked into that a sort of leadership extended scope placement where we're expecting our learners to undertake a placement sort of outside of the NHS, and perhaps they're undertaking that in an area where there isn't traditionally a dietitian, that there might be a dietetic need. And so they might be supervised by an on-site supervisor and then have a dietitian providing some long-arm supervision when they're undertaking that placement. And often they do all sorts of really interesting and highly useful things in terms of looking at sort of service improvement work and all sorts of developments or scoping activities, and sort of taking forward that work and leaving a bit of a legacy in the department where they are on placement, in terms of the different sort of work streams they've been able to take forward. And then in the sort of final year of the programme, year 3, there's a 12-week placement, which is a sort of full-time clinical placement, which is really where they are consolidating their different skills and sort of working towards achieving professional competencies, similar way to a Band 5 dietitian, in a range of sort of more complex and challenging situations. So throughout those placements, there's lots of opportunity to, in a big trust, to go into different areas of practice and experience different things. In smaller trusts, there might be opportunities to sort of exchange placements with neighbouring trusts so that you can actually extend and still have that sort of range and scope of placement provision. So as Vicky says, by the time you've finished, you will come out being quite well-rounded practitioner, not just a one-trick pony, but able to practice your skills in lots of different areas.
I am totally sold, I have to say, and it sounds really good. And I think that's really nicely, really coming to the end of this chat. And I can't believe it's almost an hour already. And I feel like we can, go on and chat more about this dietetic apprenticeship. And but I do appreciate, everybody has got something else to do in the evening. So my last question really, I think perhaps for Kate and Sean and Helen maybe, is how can interested individuals apply for this dietetics degree apprenticeship at Sheffield Hallam University, and what are the entry requirements, or where they can find the entry requirements?
Can I start off on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
So what we ask is that our applicants have Maths and English at GCSE grade 4, and we particularly ask for English on entry to the course. And again, that's the BDA requirement, and particularly because dietetics is probably about 80% communication, I would say, in terms of really having good communication skills right from the start of that learning journey, really. So that's why we ask for that up front. But for applicants, who haven't got the maths skills, certainly there's opportunity to do functional skills, and we can put them in touch with local providers to be able to take that forward while they're with us on the programme. And then we also ask they've actually studied something at level 3, and that could be quite a wide range of subjects, because really what we're interested in is their ability to study at that academic level. And we also then ask for at least 6 months experience in a related area. And again, Vicky was giving some nice examples earlier on, excuse me, of sort of working in practice and different roles that she's held, which has really helped us to have a good insight into what dietetic practice is all about. And I guess also sort of deciding whether that's for you or not. So quite a wide range of entry, and that's purposeful because we are wanting to be a widening participation organisation, and we want to create different routes through in terms of our programme. If people haven't got experience and they're applying for a degree apprenticeship and sort of coming on the course, then we do sometimes ask for more formal qualifications, because we recognise that if they haven't got the experience, we ask for formal qualifications, it probably means they're a little bit more secure in that area, because we know they'll have to work a bit harder on the practical side. So again, that would include things like level 3 BTECs, A level, access to higher education, diploma, T levels, etc. So lots of again, sort of different qualifications and routes, and we can always advise and give support if you ever wanted to check entry requirements into the course. We also have opportunities to accredit prior learning. So again, as we're now rolling through into the second year of the programme, we have had some applicants recently who were looking to accredit their prior learning. Perhaps they've got a nutrition-related degree and they've got some experience in dietetics, and we're able then to assess that and look at accelerating them into the second year of the programme. So that's probably more or less it. But again, do look at our online prospectus for further detail and information about clients.
And where can people find the information? Is it just on the website, or do they just search Sheffield Hallam University?
Yeah. If you just go to the Sheffield Hallam University website, and then you have within the search engine, you can look for particular courses. So again, if you look for the BSc Dietetics, but it's a degree apprenticeship, you'll be able to pull that up on the online prospectus.
Excellent, excellent. And I think, as Vicky and Luke said as well, you can also talk to people, find out more about what you are signing up to as well. And I think that's quite important. And the final question is, Katie, if people want to get in touch, is there any way they can get in touch with us?
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of our entry, probably contacting Sean as the course leader is the sort of first port of call, I would think, which is just sean.coleman@shu.ac.uk. So again, it's quite easy to make contact with Sean. And the other thing is to follow us on social media. And again, if we're looking particularly at Instagram and looking at SHU Dietetics, you can also follow more information in terms of sort of what happens on our courses and programs, as we have regular outputs about our learning activities in that forum.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that plug, Katie. So follow us on Instagram, on X, and on TikTok at SHU Dietetics. Wait, and for X, it's Dietetics SHU, okay? But for Instagram and for TikTok, for YouTube, it's at SHU Dietetics. And thank you so much to this panel tonight. And I really enjoyed the chat, and hope you all too. And thank you so much, Luke and Vicky as well, for joining this chat. And Vicky, good luck in your second year and your final year. And I really hope you enjoyed the first year, despite must be challenging and busy. But I hope you enjoyed it. And would you guys like to join us again in the future for another chat?
Anything for you, Long.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you so much. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Katie, for this chat. And I hope people who are watching enjoy this chat as well. So this video will be made available on YouTube as well in the future, and we will edit this video to small bite-sized videos and post them on our social media platform as well. So have a lovely evening, everybody, and good night. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.